She thought the night she got fired in the rain was the end of everything she'd worked for. But what happened the next morning at a quiet cafe changed her life in a way no one could have imagined. Stay tuned because you are about to watch a beautiful story and find out what happened next. Hello, family. Welcome to Tales Haven. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. The night started with thunder. Not the gentle kind that rolled lazily across the clouds, but the kind that made the city blink with lightning and roar like the sky itself was breaking. Naomi Blake ran through the rain-soaked streets, one hand holding her cheap umbrella, the other gripping a thin plastic bag that carried her uniform for the evening, a black and white dress, and a pair of flat shoes. Her chest rose and fell quickly as she reached the Grand Marlowe Hotel, one of the city's most elegant and expensive buildings. She stood at the staff entrance, dripping wet, trying to catch her breath. Her heart pounded against her ribs, like it wanted to escape. She was late. Naomi worked shifts for an event staffing agency, moving from hotel to hotel, sometimes restaurant to restaurant. Tonight's event was the annual City Charity Gala, the biggest event of the year. The agency had warned everyone, be early or don't come at all. But Naomi's bus had broken down halfway to town, and by the time she found another one, the rain had turned the roads into small rivers. She whispered to herself, "Please let me still have this job tonight. Please." Inside the staff changing room, she quickly took off her wet clothes, towel-dried her hair, and slipped into the crisp black uniform. She buttoned it carefully, fixed her name tag, Naomi B., and tied her curly hair into a neat bun. Her shoes squished as she stepped, but she didn't care. Before leaving, she reached into her small purse and took out a photo, her mother, smiling weakly from a hospital bed. Naomi kissed it softly. "Just tonight, Mama," she whispered. "After this job, I'll pay for your medicine." Then she straightened her back, smiled at her reflection, and walked into the golden ballroom. The ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like floating stars. Soft violin music filled the air. Guests in designer gowns and tuxedos laughed over champagne and whispered about business deals. Waiters moved like shadows, silent and smooth. Naomi carried her tray of champagne glasses, careful not to clink them. She had done this many times before. Step forward, smile politely, offer drinks, step back. But tonight, she felt a strange tension in the air, maybe from the wealthy guests pretending to care about charity, or maybe from the fact that her supervisor, Rita, was watching like a hawk. Rita never smiled. She believed in perfection and had no patience for mistakes. Naomi moved around the room with quiet grace. She noticed the sharp scent of expensive perfume, the flash of diamond earrings, and the small but cruel smirks some guests gave to the staff. She was invisible to them, and that was fine. Invisible meant safe. Until it wasn't. Near the center of the ballroom stood a tall, elegant woman in a silver gown that shimmered like moonlight. Her name was Helena Voss, one of the event's biggest donors. Everyone knew her, rich, proud, and unkind. Helena raised her hand sharply. "You, waitress. Champagne." Naomi hurried over with a respectful smile. "Yes, ma'am." But just as Helena reached for a glass, a man behind her turned suddenly and bumped Naomi's arm. The tray shook. One glass tipped over and splashed its golden contents right onto Helena's shining gown. The sound was small, but the silence that followed was huge. Helena gasped loudly, staring at the wet stains spreading down her dress. "What have you done?" she shouted. "Do you know how much this costs?" Naomi's heart dropped. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," she said quickly, pulling out a napkin. "Someone bumped into me. Let me." Helena stepped back sharply. "Don't touch me," she barked, her voice echoing through the hall. A few guests turned to watch. Someone snickered. Rita appeared almost instantly. "Naomi," she hissed. "What happened?" "She spilled champagne all over me," Helena said coldly. "And she's blaming someone else." Naomi tried to explain. "It wasn't." "I don't want excuses," Rita snapped. "Go to the back. Now." Naomi's cheeks burned. Her vision blurred with humiliation. She turned and walked quickly toward the exit, her hands trembling. Behind her, she could still hear laughter, soft, rich, and cruel. In the staff corridor, Naomi leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. She felt the tears rising but refused to let them fall. Crying would only make things worse. She wiped her eyes and told herself, "You need this job. Hold it together." She stepped into the old service elevator to get back to the kitchen, pressing the button for the basement. The doors closed with a creak, and the elevator started to move, slowly, then suddenly stopped with a jolt between floors. The light flickered. The air felt heavy. Naomi pressed the emergency button. Nothing. She pressed again. Still nothing. Her heart started to race. "Oh no, please not now," she whispered. For a few seconds, she panicked. Then she remembered her mother's voice. "When things go wrong, breathe first." She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and leaned against the cold metal wall. That was when she heard it, a voice from outside, calm and deep. "Hey, you okay in there?" Naomi jumped. "Who's that?" "Someone standing in front of a stuck elevator," the man replied lightly. "Maintenance is coming, but it might take a while." Naomi let out a shaky laugh. "Great. That's exactly what I needed tonight." "Rough day." "The roughest," she said honestly. "I spilled a drink on someone powerful, got yelled at, and now I'm trapped in an elevator." "Sounds like a movie," the man said. "The part before everything gets better." Naomi smiled despite herself. "Yeah, well, I hope the next scene comes soon." "What's your name?" he asked.
Naomi.
"Yours?" "Daniel." They talked through the small gap in the door. His voice was warm, calm, the kind that made fear shrink a little. Naomi found herself laughing, telling him about her mother, about her dream to study hospitality someday, and about how life had been throwing stones lately. Daniel listened, never interrupting. "You sound stronger than you think," he said quietly. Naomi blinked at the strange kindness in his tone. "You don't even know me." "Maybe not. But I can tell when someone's trying to survive with grace." Before she could reply, the elevator jerked back to life and began moving again. The doors opened slowly, and Naomi blinked at the bright light of the hallway. The man standing there was tall, well-dressed, and surprisingly gentle-looking. His tuxedo fit perfectly, but his eyes were what she noticed, calm, intelligent, and kind. "Hi, Naomi," he said with a small smile. "Welcome back to solid ground." She gave a nervous laugh. "Thank you for keeping me sane." "Anytime." Before they could say more, Rita appeared again, furious. "Naomi, where have you been? We've been looking everywhere. Do you think this is a game? You're done. Hand in your badge." Naomi froze. "Rita, the elevator. I don't care about excuses. You're fired." The words hit like cold water. Naomi slowly unpinned her name tag and handed it over. "Thank you for the opportunity," she said softly, trying not to cry. Daniel frowned slightly, but said nothing as Rita walked away. Outside the hotel, the rain had softened to a light drizzle. Naomi sat on the steps, hugging her knees, watching cars pass. Her chest ached, her throat tight. Daniel walked up quietly and held out an umbrella. "You shouldn't sit in the rain." She looked up. "Why are you being nice to me?" He smiled faintly. "Because the world isn't always fair to the ones who deserve kindness most." Naomi hesitated. "I don't even know who you are." "Just someone who believes in second chances," he said. Then he pulled out a small card from his jacket and handed it to her. "Meet me tomorrow at the cafe on 3rd and Willow. 9 a.m. I might have something that could help." Naomi stared at the card. It simply read Daniel Wesley, Wesley Foundation. She had heard that name before. The man whose company rebuilt schools, hospitals, and entire communities. "You're that Daniel Wesley?" she asked quietly. He gave a half-smile. "I'm just Daniel right now." She didn't know what to say. He started to walk away, then turned and added, "Sometimes the worst nights lead us exactly where we're meant to be." Naomi sat there for a long moment, staring at the card in her trembling hand. The rain stopped. The city lights reflected on the wet pavement like stars had fallen to earth. She thought this was the worst night of her life. But somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered, maybe not. The next morning came quietly, the city still damp from the night's rain. Naomi woke up early, long before sunrise. Her small apartment felt colder than usual, but her heart was restless. She hadn't slept well. Thoughts of the previous night kept looping in her head. The humiliation, the elevator, the stranger named Daniel Wesley. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the business card lying on her bedside table. Wesley Foundation. The name carried weight. She had seen it on billboards in newspapers, on the sides of trucks that delivered aid to schools and hospitals. But she still couldn't understand why a man like that would bother with someone like her. For a moment, she thought about not going. What if it's a mistake? What if he was just being polite? What if he doesn't even remember? But another voice in her head, the one that sounded like her mother, whispered, "You'll never know unless you try." Naomi stood, dressed neatly in her cleanest outfit, a pale cream blouse and a dark skirt she had ironed the night before. She tied her hair back into a ponytail and slipped her worn shoes on. Then, she grabbed the photo of her mother, kissed it softly, and whispered, "Wish me luck, Mama." The cafe at 3rd and Willow was warm and full of the smell of coffee and cinnamon. People were reading newspapers, typing on laptops, or talking quietly over breakfast. Naomi hesitated at the door, her hands cold despite the warmth inside. She spotted him immediately. Daniel Wesley. No tuxedo this time, no crowd of admirers. He sat by the window, dressed in a dark gray sweater and jeans, his hair slightly tousled, a mug of coffee in front of him. He looked ordinary, almost too ordinary for a man whose name was known across the city. When he saw her, his eyes brightened. He stood up immediately. "You came," he said, smiling. Naomi nodded nervously. "I almost didn't." "I'm glad you did," he replied and gestured for her to sit. "Tea or coffee?" "Tea, please," she said softly. "Coffee makes me shake." Daniel waved at the waitress. "2 teas, please, one with honey." They sat for a moment in silence, watching the city move outside the glass. Naomi's fingers toyed with a napkin. Finally, she said, "You didn't have to call me here, Mr. Wesley. I know I made a mess last night." He smiled gently. "You can call me Daniel. And for the record, you didn't make a mess, life did. You just stood in the wrong spot when it happened." Naomi looked down. "That's kind of you to say." "It's also true," he said simply. "I've seen people crumble after smaller things. You held your head high and apologized, even when you weren't at fault. That says something about your character." Naomi blinked in surprise. She wasn't used to hearing that kind of praise. "I just did what I thought was right." Daniel nodded slowly. "Exactly. And people who do what's right when no one's watching are the kind of people I want around." She frowned slightly. "Around? What do you mean?" He reached into his bag and took out a folder. "The Wesley Foundation is expanding one of our programs, helping small charities organize events and raise funds. We need someone who understands real work, not just fancy talk. Someone who can bring order to chaos and stay calm under pressure. I think that's you." Naomi blinked, unsure she heard correctly. "You want to hire me?" "On a trial basis," he clarified. 3 months. If it works out, it can become permanent. Fair pay, health benefits, flexible schedule. You'll have to work hard, but I think you already know how to do that." Naomi's lips parted, but no words came out. She felt dizzy, as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Daniel said with a small grin. "You've earned this. You just need the chance." She hesitated. "Why me, though? You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said softly. "I know that you stayed polite when others mocked you, that you helped even when it wasn't your fault, and that you didn't lose your grace. I value that more than any degree." Naomi bit her lip. Her eyes watered slightly, though she tried to hide it. I'll take the chance. Thank you." Daniel smiled. "Then welcome aboard, Naomi." Naomi walked home from the cafe with a strange lightness in her step. The air smelled of wet earth, and the sun had finally broken through the clouds. For the first time in months, She felt hope stretch inside her like warm sunlight after a storm. When she got home, she called her mother. "Mama, you won't believe it," she said breathlessly. "The man I told you about from the elevator, he offered me a job. A real one." Her mother's weak but joyful laugh echoed through the phone. "See? I told you, my child. God hides blessings inside bad days." Naomi smiled, tears forming. "You're right. This feels like a new start." Monday morning came faster than she expected. Naomi woke early again, determined not to be late. She took a deep breath before stepping into the tall glass building that held the Wesley Foundation offices. Inside, the place was beautiful but simple. No gold, no marble, just clean spaces, bright walls, and plants that made everything feel alive. People moved with quiet purpose. At the reception desk, a cheerful woman with short curly hair greeted her. "You must be Naomi." "I'm Priya. Daniel told me you're joining us today." "Yes, ma'am," Naomi replied nervously. "Don't call me ma'am," Priya laughed. "We're all family here. Come, I'll show you around." Naomi followed her through the office, meeting warm faces and friendly smiles. Her desk was near a window overlooking the city. A small note rested on top of it, written in Daniel's handwriting. "Welcome home, D." Naomi smiled softly and whispered, "Thank you." She quickly adapted to the work, organizing charity schedules, creating lists, contacting vendors, and fixing small issues before they became big ones. Her ability to stay calm under pressure made her popular among her teammates. Daniel wasn't around much, but when he came by, he always spoke with kindness. Never loud, never commanding, always listening. 3 weeks later, Naomi got her first big challenge, organizing a children's literacy event at a community center that had leaking roofs and no proper lighting. The team was nervous, but Naomi stepped forward. "We can make it work," she said firmly. "We just need to be smart about it." She spent days gathering resources, borrowed decorations, discounted snacks from a local bakery, and chairs from a nearby church. She even convinced a carpenter to fix the broken stage in exchange for a small donation. On the day of the event, rain threatened again, but the children still came, excited, smiling, holding worn-out books in their hands. Naomi welcomed every single one with warmth. Daniel arrived quietly halfway through the program. He didn't announce himself. He just watched from the back, seeing how Naomi moved, calm, confident, kind. When the event ended, everyone clapped for her. Daniel approached her with 2 cups of tea. "You made something beautiful out of almost nothing," he said. Naomi smiled shyly. "I just wanted the children to feel seen." He nodded slowly. "You did more than that. You reminded us what this foundation stands for." They stood there for a while, watching the children run around the small hall, laughing. Naomi felt something gentle stirring in her chest, a mix of pride and something she couldn't yet name. Days turned into weeks. Naomi became a familiar name in the office, the woman who never panicked, who found solutions where others found excuses. Daniel started calling her into meetings, asking for her opinion, valuing her voice. She tried to keep her distance, reminding herself that he was her boss, a billionaire, a man from another world. But every time he spoke, he made her feel like an equal. One evening, after a long meeting, they both found themselves alone by the elevator, the same kind of elevator where they had first spoken. Naomi hesitated before pressing the button. Daniel noticed and smiled gently. "Don't worry. This one's newer." Naomi laughed softly. "I guess I still remember that night." "So do I," he said. "It was the night I met someone remarkable." Her eyes met his for a brief moment, and something silent passed between them. Not words, not promises, just understanding. The elevator doors opened, but neither of them moved for a second. They simply smiled, stepped inside, and let the quiet hum of the lift carry them upward, not knowing that it wasn't just their careers that were rising, but their hearts too. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft sigh. Naomi stood beside Daniel, their shoulders not quite touching. She could hear the quiet hum of the machine and, beneath it, both of their steady breaths. It wasn't romance yet. It wasn't a promise. It was a calm feeling, like standing on a bridge that felt strong under your feet. When the doors opened, they stepped out together. Daniel held the door to the corridor and smiled. "Good work today, Naomi." "Thank you," she said, "for believing I could do it." They walked in opposite directions, but the feeling stayed with both of them all evening. 2 days later, Daniel stopped at Naomi's desk near closing time. He didn't lean or linger. He stood with the polite ease he always carried. "There's a tiny Ethiopian place on Maple Street," he said. "It's quiet. Good food. Would you like to go? Off the clock." Naomi looked up, surprised by how gently he asked. Boundaries mattered to her. So did honesty. "Yes," she said after a breath. "I'd like that." They met outside the restaurant at 7. No bodyguards, no photographers, no limousine. Daniel came in a dark jacket and clean sneakers. Naomi wore a simple navy dress with a cardigan. Inside, the owner greeted Daniel with a clap on the shoulder and greeted Naomi with equal warmth, as if she had always belonged there. They shared a large platter, spiced stews, tender lentils, and soft injera. Daniel showed her how to tear the bread and scoop. Naomi teased him when he dropped a piece and laughed at himself. They talked about ordinary things first: books they loved, childhood foods, streets that smelled like memory after the rain. Then the talk grew deeper, naturally. "My mother says I was born organized," Naomi said, smiling. "When I was 8, I lined up my pencils by size." "And now you line up entire events," Daniel replied. "Not bad progress." She told him about her father leaving when she was young, about the years when money was a whisper and courage had to be loud. She did not apologize for any part of her story. He listened without trying to fix it. He told her about the foundation's early days, how his parents started it with modest means and big hearts, and how he had learned that money without humility broke things. "Buildings are easy," he said. "Trust is the hard part." When the bill came, the owner waved it away. "For both of you," he said. "For what you do for the kids." Outside, the night air was cool. They walked slowly to the corner. "Thank you for tonight," Naomi said. "Thank you for saying yes," Daniel replied. He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't rush the moment. He simply looked at her the way people look at a place they know they will return to. They kept work professional and clear. In the office, Daniel treated Naomi like any other capable member of the team. In the evenings, when schedules allowed, they explored small parts of the city that most people drove past. On one Saturday, Naomi took Daniel to the open-air market by the river. Vendors called out prices. Fish glittered on ice. Mangoes piled high like summer hills. Naomi showed him how to check fruit by scent and softness. "Not the shiny one," she said, lifting a mango to his nose. "The sweet one." He laughed. "You're an expert." "Only because I've bought fruit that lied." They sat on a low wall, shared roasted corn, and watched children chase each other between stalls. Naomi noticed how Daniel paid attention without trying to control anything, how he greeted people, how he never checked his phone when she was talking. On another evening, Daniel brought Naomi to a quiet bookshop that stayed open late. He pulled a small poetry book from a cracked shelf and read a few lines aloud in a low voice. Naomi listened, the words sinking into her like warm tea. None of it looked grand. All of it felt real. Naomi waited until she was sure this was not a passing kindness, not a restless rich man's hobby, before she asked Daniel to meet her mother. The hospital room was small but tidy. Sunlight, pale and clean, lay across the bed. Mrs. Blake was sitting up, a scarf tied around her hair, a Bible on her lap. "Mama," Naomi said softly, "this is Daniel." Daniel stepped forward with flowers, sunflowers, bright as daylight. "It's an honor to meet you, ma'am." Mrs. Blake smiled, eyes sharp with history. "So, you are the gentleman from the elevator." "I suppose I am," he said, a little shy. They spoke about simple things first, how the nurses fussed kindly, how the tea was too weak, how the foundation had replaced the community center roof last month. Daniel listened more than he spoke, and when Mrs. Blake grew tired, he adjusted the pillow with quiet care. After he left the room for a moment to get water, Mrs. Blake caught Naomi's hand. "Your face is peaceful," she said. "Not because of his money, because of his manner." Naomi nodded. He makes the room softer. Good, Mrs. Blake said. A kind man keeps the weather gentle. When Daniel returned, Mrs. Blake asked, "What do you want from my daughter?" Daniel didn't flinch. "Honesty, partnership, and time," he answered. "In the order she chooses." Mrs. Blake studied him, then smiled. "Carry each other's bags, not each other's choices." "We will try," he said. Word travels fast in a city that loves a story. People noticed them walking together after work one evening. Some smiled. Some whispered. One of the whispers wore a silver gown. Helena Voss saw Naomi and Daniel outside the foundation and approached with a polished smile that never reached her eyes. "Mr. Wesley," she said, voice sweet. "I see you've found company." Daniel's expression remained cordial but distant. "Ms. Voss." Helena's gaze drifted over Naomi, pausing on her modest shoes, her plain tote bag. "I do hope you remember which circles you belong to," Helena told Naomi, still smiling. Naomi opened her mouth to answer, but Daniel's voice, calm and even, came first. "Helena," he said, "Naomi is part of my circle because she earns her place every day. Good afternoon." He guided Naomi toward the door. Inside, in the quiet of the lobby, he turned to her. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." "I've heard worse," Naomi said, steady. "But I'm grateful you spoke." "I spoke because it was right," he replied. "Not because you needed defending." The difference mattered to her. The sting of Helena's words faded. A week later, a donor dinner fell apart. The head caterer was sick, the replacement van broke down, and the hall's lighting panel failed 20 minutes before guests arrived. Naomi moved like a conductor. She called a small family restaurant she knew from the market. Within an hour, they delivered trays of fragrant rice, grilled chicken, and vegetable stew. She strung spare fairy lights across the beams and borrowed candles from the venue manager. She wrote small handwritten cards for each table explaining exactly how donations would be used. When Daniel arrived, jacket over his arm, the room glowed warm and inviting, not expensive, but sincere. He paused in the doorway and watched Naomi speak softly to a nervous volunteer, steadying her. After the meal, guests left smiling, several giving more than they had planned. Daniel found Naomi near the stage, winding extra string lights around her elbow. "You turned panic into welcome," he said. "We turned panic into welcome," she corrected. "I just pointed the way." He glanced around, then lowered his voice. "May I take you to dinner tomorrow? No work talk. Just us." Naomi stood very still, then nodded. "Yes." They chose a small Italian place with checkered tablecloths and a gentle old waiter who called them "my favorite young people" after 10 minutes. Over pasta and iced water, they spoke carefully and clearly. "I don't want to be a secret," Naomi said. "And I don't want to be a headline." "Neither do I," he answered. "I want a life that fits in real rooms." "I'm not used to taking help," she admitted. "I've had to carry my own weight for a long time." "Then we can share the weight," Daniel said. "Not take it from each other." "What if people talk?" "They will," he said simply. "But talk cannot pay our bills or decide our values. We do that." Naomi looked down at her hands, then up at his face. She saw steadiness there, not pressure. "Then let's move slowly," she said. "Carefully. One step at a time." "Step by step," he agreed. "And if either of us needs to pause, we pause." They left the restaurant without touching, yet closer than if they had rushed. Outside, the sky was clear. The city lights looked like patient stars. Several weeks later, Naomi's trial period ended. Priya called her into a meeting room with glass walls and handed her a letter. "Permanent position," Priya said, eyes bright. "You've earned it. We're lucky to have you." Naomi swallowed hard, reading the words twice. The salary would cover her mother's medication. The benefits would steady their lives. She breathed out a trembling thank you. When she stepped into the corridor, Daniel was there as if he had been waiting only for the moment, not for the credit. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Like the floor just got stronger," she said, laughing softly. He nodded toward the lobby. "Walk with me?" They stepped out into the evening. The air smelled faintly of rain, as if the city remembered their beginning. They stopped on the foundation steps. "I want to say something," Daniel said, careful with his words. Not as your boss. As the man who asked you to go slow. She waited. I'm not in a hurry, he said, but I am serious. You are not an idea to me. You are a person I admire and care for. If we keep choosing each other, I believe this could be a good life. Naomi felt her heart open like a window. I believe that too, she said. Let's keep choosing. He didn't kiss her. He didn't need to. They stood side by side, watching the quiet street, certain of the direction even without a map. Far above them, somewhere in the city's tangle of buildings, an elevator glided smoothly between floors, proof that some things that once trapped you can be fixed, and that new doors open when fear learns your name and decides to leave you alone. The wind was soft that morning, brushing gently through the leaves as if it already knew something beautiful was about to happen. Naomi stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment, adjusting the simple ivory gown she had chosen for her wedding day. There were no diamonds, no crowd of reporters, no luxury haul. Only a white dress, a calm heart, and a promise that felt truer than any headline ever could. Her mother, Mrs. Blake, sat nearby, wearing a sky-blue shawl. Her eyes shimmered with both pride and tears. You look like peace, my child, she whispered. Naomi smiled, walking over to hold her mother's hands. You taught me how to find it. When the car arrived from the foundation, Naomi took one last look around her apartment, the place where she had cried, prayed, and rebuilt herself. Then she whispered softly, "Thank you for every hard day that led me here," and closed the door behind her. The garden behind the Wesley Foundation looked nothing like a Billionaire'S venue. It looked like home. Neat rows of flowers, a wooden arch wrapped with paper cranes made by children from the Literacy Center, and white chairs arranged in a small circle. Every decoration carried a story. The ribbons were cut by volunteers, the lanterns were borrowed from the community hall, and the music was played by 2 local students who had once received scholarships from the foundation. Daniel stood beneath the arch, dressed in a simple gray suit. His tie was slightly loose, just like always. He wasn't nervous, he was thankful. Every step that brought Naomi to this moment had also brought him closer to the kind of love he never thought he'd find. When she walked down the narrow aisle, holding a small bouquet of white lilies, everyone fell silent. The world seemed to hold its breath. Daniel's eyes softened the moment he saw her, and he forgot everyone else existed. Priya, their friend and colleague, stood as the officiant. She smiled warmly. Today isn't about wealth or titles, she said. It's about 2 people who met on the hardest night of one's life and turned it into a story of grace. Naomi and Daniel faced each other, their hands gently joined. Daniel's voice was steady when he spoke. Naomi, I loved you first for your calmness in chaos, then for your courage when life was unfair. You taught me that strength can be quiet and love can be simple. I vow to listen before I speak, to protect without pride, and to choose you every single morning. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Naomi's eyes filled with tears as she took a small breath. Daniel, I loved you first for your kindness, for being the man who spoke gently through an elevator door when the world was unkind. You saw me when others looked past me, and you respected me when others judged me. I vow to walk beside you, to stay humble even in joy, and to keep our life simple enough to feel real. You are my home, no matter where we live. When they exchanged rings, Mrs. Blake cried softly, and even Priya had to pause to wipe her eyes. Then Daniel leaned forward and kissed Naomi, slow, sure, and full of peace. The garden erupted in applause. Laughter, music, and soft cheers filled the air. Naomi felt the warmth of every hand clap, every smile, every prayer. The reception was small but full of heart. Tables were covered with handmade centerpieces crafted by local children. The cake wasn't huge or perfect. It was baked by a nearby cafe owner who owed his first business loan to the foundation. Daniel and Naomi danced to a quiet song that only the 2 of them seemed to hear. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't flawless. But it was theirs. His hand rested gently on her waist. Her head leaned against his shoulder. They moved in small circles, laughing softly. I can't believe this is real, Naomi whispered. Neither can I, Daniel replied, smiling. But if it's a dream, let's not wake up. Nearby, Mrs. Blake held her cup of tea, watching with full eyes. She turned to Priya and said, "He looks at her the way a man should, like she's not a prize but a purpose." As the sun dipped lower, a familiar face appeared at the edge of the garden. Helena Voss, the same woman whose silver gown had once carried Naomi's shame. Her expression was calm, no longer proud or mocking. She walked toward Naomi, holding a small envelope. "Naomi," she said softly, "I wasn't sure if I should come, but I needed to." Naomi looked at her kindly. "You're welcome here." Helena hesitated, then spoke with rare honesty. "That night at the gala, I was cruel. I judged you without reason. You taught me something I didn't know I needed to learn, that dignity doesn't come from money. It comes from grace. I'm donating to your literacy program in your name. It's the least I can do." Naomi's eyes softened. "Thank you, Helena. Forgiveness is lighter than anger. I hope you find peace too." Helena smiled faintly. "I already have, seeing you like this." When she left, Daniel touched Naomi's shoulder. "That was kind of you." "She was broken too, just differently," Naomi said. "Sometimes people hide their pain under pride." After the guests left and the lights began to fade, Daniel and Naomi sat together on the garden steps. The city glowed beyond the fence, and the air smelled of fresh earth and lilies. "Do you ever think about that night?" he asked softly. "All the time," she replied. "It felt like everything was falling apart, but now I see it was falling into place." Daniel chuckled quietly. "You mean the elevator and the spilled champagne?" Naomi smiled. "Yes. The night I thought I lost everything was the night I found my future." He took her hand and squeezed it gently. "We've both learned something. Sometimes blessings walk in wearing rain." Naomi leaned against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his heartbeat. The stars above them seemed brighter than ever. For a moment, neither spoke. They didn't need to. The silence itself felt full of gratitude, love, and the quiet promise of forever. The next morning, Naomi woke to the sound of birds outside the window. Light streamed through soft curtains. Daniel was already up, sitting by the table with a cup of tea and a smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Wesley," he said teasingly. Naomi laughed. "That's still strange to hear." "Get used to it," he said, walking over to her. "Because we have work today." "Work?" she asked, surprised. He nodded. "There's a community kitchen opening at 10. The volunteers asked if we could come. They said it wouldn't feel complete without you." Naomi grinned. "So no honeymoon?" He shook his head playfully. "We'll have a lifetime for that. But today, we get to do what brought us together in the first place." She rose from the bed, slipped on a simple dress, and tied her hair back. As they stepped out of the house hand in hand, Daniel said, "This is our life now, not perfect, but full. And that's enough." Naomi smiled. "More than enough." They arrived at the community kitchen, where children ran around laughing and volunteers waved excitedly. Together, Naomi and Daniel helped serve meals, laugh with families, and plan new ways to grow their projects. At one point, Naomi looked around, at the people eating, the volunteers smiling, her mother sitting happily among them, and whispered to herself, "This is what love looks like when it's real." That night, as they returned home, Naomi placed her wedding bouquet on the table beside a small silver frame, the photo of her mother she used to carry everywhere. Beside it, she set the old hotel name tag that once read Naomi B., the same one she had handed back on the worst night of her life. She looked at Daniel and said quietly, "This is where it all began." He smiled. "And this is where it keeps beginning, every single day." Outside, the city lights shimmered softly, and somewhere in the Grand Marlowe Hotel, the elevator that had once trapped her moved smoothly between floors, a small, silent reminder that even the darkest moments can lift you to places you never imagined. Naomi rested her head on Daniel's shoulder as the night wrapped around them. And for the first time in years, her heart whispered not in fear but in peace, "I am finally home." That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you find this story worth watching. If you do, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories, like, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thanks for watching.